Alright, what's going on? My name's Ian.
My name's Corey.
We're just two white boys talking hoops. Alright, so this week we're going to go over our all-star ballots for the West. Basic stuff, our starters, who we think is locks, bench, wild cards, injury reserves.
Yep.
Yeah, you want to start that?
Yeah. So, do you want to start with the East or the West?
Let's start with the West.
West? Alright. Do you want to go, our full starters, or do you want to go, back and forth one at a time?
So why don't we do, you say your starting five, I'll say my starting five, we'll talk about each person in said starting five, do the bench, etc.
Alright, well, first guard I have as the captain I have Steph Curry as my captain. My second guard coming off the bench is Donovan Mitchell.
Is he coming off the bench or is he starting?
Or starting, whatever. I think Steph is just having an MVP season. He's come back off of his injuries, and he's just leading the Warriors team to top 2 team in the league, arguably. And he's just an MVP this year. That's my prediction for MVP.
See, I've got Steph starting as well. As far as, his resume, like he's an MVP candidate, definitely leading the league. He has taken a bit of a dip recently, but I don't think that'll hinder him. I didn't pick out a captain. If we were doing captains, I probably would have picked Steph for the Western Conference captain.
It's hard to pick him and LeBron. It's something we're not used to having to do.
Yeah. I definitely think that of the West, though, Steph's just having a better season.
Yeah.
Overall. His team just hit 10 losses recently.
He's actually playing winning basketball. Something the Lakers can't really do that well.
Yeah, Lakers are struggling a lot.
Yeah.
Who's your second guard?
Donovan Mitchell. I put him in the starting lineup over Ja just because I think this would be Ja's first All-Star appearance. I don't think they're going to have him start when his first All-Star appearance over a dude like Donovan Mitchell, who they're averaging very similar numbers. They're both having very similar team success. Donovan Mitchell's numbers are just slightly better. He's shooting slightly better from the field. He is shooting, I think, a decent amount better than Ja Morant is from the 3 also. So, yeah, I chose Donovan Mitchell over Ja.
And see, I had Ja starting. I think that Ja's going to be more fan appealing. He's a lot more exciting. He's brought Memphis up.
Yeah.
Because on paper, Utah should have the better team, but Ja's keeping Memphis, neck and neck in the Western Conference.
I don't even know what Utah's record is currently.
Here, I'll look it up.
All right, but I can see Ja still starting over Donovan. I think he will get more fan votes, but we've seen in the past that it's not all about the fan votes.
Yeah, so the Grizzlies' record is currently 29-14, and the Jazz is 28-14.
Oh, wow.
So they're, right there.
Yeah.
But with Ja being hurt for a decent amount of games recently, coming back and getting right back on that train that he was on, I think he just has it slightly over Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell is going to be an all-star, no doubt about that. But with how Ja's playing, he's putting his team on his back for the most part. He's got the starter nod from me. Excuse me.
Yeah, that's fair. He is my first guard coming off my reserves. But for my first forward, I think is undebatable LeBron, and also having Jokic as the other forward.
Yeah, LeBron and Jokic are definitely the 2 of the 3 forwards that are locks for certain.
Jokic is just the number 1 center in the league. The Nuggets, the entire team except Jokic, is just broken and injured, and he's just still leading that team to contending at least.
Yeah, right now in the West, the Nuggets are the 6th seed at 20-19, and that's essentially on Jokic's back.
Yeah, that's surprising considering he's the only, all their other star-type players are out.
Yeah.
He's just leading that team.
Jamal Murray's been out since, the playoffs last year?
Is he even coming back this season, or is he out this whole season?
Jamal Murray's out the entire season, I believe.
Jesus.
And Michael Porter Jr., who was my early season pick for most improved player, re-injured his back. And Aaron Gordon, who they traded for to be a fundamental piece, has not been playing well at all this season. So Jokic is putting this team on his back.
I miss Jamal Murray. I can't wait for him to come back. He reminds me kind of like how Darren Williams played with the Jazz.
It's an interesting comparison.
I see it a little bit, and I like the way they play.
Yeah, I definitely... The battle of Jamal Murray versus Donovan Mitchell in the bubble was probably some of the most fun basketball I've seen in a long time.
If Jamal Murray didn't get injured and they just kept making the playoffs, a Jamal Murray Donovan Mitchell rivalry would become a thing, and it still can. But I can definitely see that becoming a thing.
It was an ACL tear?
I think it was an ACL.
Yeah, he's done for this year. I mean, we know how dangerous those can be, but we're getting slightly off track here.
Yeah, I have LeBron and Jokic as my other two forwards, and then my last one I have Karl Anthony Towns starting.
You got Cat as your starter?
Yeah, it's just I didn't really know who else to put starting, since there aren't that very many forwards to just give a starter credit to. So I went with Cat.
Excuse me.
He can play power forward, I guess, and he's averaging 25 points. He's having a big comeback season from the little bit of a letdown season last year.
The past few years have been letdown seasons, really.
Yeah, but he took a huge step down in scoring last year, and he's brought that way back up. And he's still continuing to show that he's the only good piece on the Timberwolves alongside Anthony Edwards, I guess. But yeah, he's my other starter. What about yours? How do you finish it?
I had LeBron and Jokic as two of my forwards. Those are locks. I think the unquestionable locks for the starters in the West were Curry, LeBron, and Jokic, no doubt.
Yeah.
My other forward was Paul George. After Kawhi went out last year in the playoffs, the Clippers didn't even really miss a beat. They hung in there with the Suns in the Western Conference Finals without their best player. And then they started off super hot this year with Kawhi being out. You know, if Paul George doesn't get injured, I think they're still a top team in the West.
Yeah, I see where I have Paul George on my reserves. I didn't give him as much credit because he got injured so long ago. I guess I kind of forgot how good he was the start of the season.
He was an early season MVP candidate in some people's eyes. I wouldn't say in my eyes, but in some people's eyes, yeah.
Yeah, I did see that in a lot of places. When I was making my list, I wasn't really thinking about that. But I can make a case for him starting 2 over Cat.
Yeah. So, again, Cat absolutely deserves it. I just think that Paul George is that one step above.
Yeah.
Plus, I, for the most part, like to see his, the guard spot's a little, what's the word, uncertain, because most of the point guards nowadays could play shooting guard.
Yeah.
But I personally like to see a small forward, power forward, center as my front court.
Yeah. How do you start out your East? I started with the West, so you start here.
So we're going to do the East starters?
Yeah.
Or do you want to do the West bench and just do one side and one side? That way it doesn't get confusing.
All right, yeah, we can go on the West.
So West bench. My 2 guards off my West bench were Donovan Mitchell.
Yep.
I explained this earlier. Amazing season. All-star lock. And then my other guard was Devon Booker.
Okay.
Shooting career high from three-point percentage. Best team in the league. Only team to not have double-digit losses as of right now. And this is being recorded on January 13th. So as of January 13th, they are the only team left in the league without double-digit losses. Best player on that team. His assist numbers have gone down a little bit this year. Or have they gone up? I think they're down. I might be mistaken though. Okay, so last year he averaged. Oh no, his assist numbers dropped. When Chris Paul got there, they're actually very similar. He averaged 4.3 assists last year. He's averaging 4.4 this year. He's shooting better from 3 though. He shot 34% from 3 from last year. He's shooting 40% this year. So yeah, I had Devin Booker. The first couple years of his career, he was viewed as the empty stats guy that got that trip to the finals, and now he's finally getting some of the respect he deserves.
I also have Devin Booker on my list, but I have him in injury reserve for some reason because I messed up on the list earlier, and that's just where I stuck him. I guess I could have stuck him over my other guard that I have, but for my reserves, the 2 guards I have are Ja and Shea. I think Shea is just having a very, very similar season to a guy like Devin Booker numbers-wise. He's not winning as much as Devin Booker, so I guess that's why I could probably swap the 2. Shea play makes a little bit more than Devin Booker too, and just he's having a hell of a season.
I can understand that. I did not have Shea on my list.
I thought that was going to be the one person I had that you didn't have, so I'm proud about that.
Yeah, I think if Shea was on, a team that wasn't planning on trading more than likely all of his teammates for third graders, then maybe he'd be having a lot more recognition. So for my three forwards are Karl Anthony Towns. We talked about him in his starting spot. Absolutely deserves it.
Yep.
Rudy Gobert, defensive monster on the Jazz. Another guy who, you see without him on the court, the Jazz's defense completely crumbles. Yeah. It's kind of actually, it's impressive how much of a defensive impact he is.
He's so underrated. People don't look at the Jazz's success and look at Rudy Gobert as much as they should. I feel like people just all look at Donovan Mitchell, and people really don't realize that without Rudy Gobert on the court, the Jazz are just awful.
At least defensively. So they're one of the best offenses in the league, but defensively they aren't stopping anything.
No.
And then my last forward, I did not want to put this guy on the All-Star ballot. I do not like this guy as a player, but there's no arguing that he absolutely deserves it this year. Arguably the defensive player of the year, and that's Draymond Green.
Yeah. Our West ballots kind of finish out similar as my forwards are Paul George. You talked about him with the starters. I had him down in the reserves. I guess I forgot how he's in the MVP talks at the beginning of the season before he got injured. But then I also have Draymond and Rudy to finish out my reserves.
So for my wild card or utility players, whatever you want to call them, I actually did two guards. The forwards are really thin this year in the league. Obviously, it's been a guard-heavy league for a while, but especially this year, it was really hard to put forwards in. So I didn't. My two wild card slots go to Luka Doncic and Chris Paul.
Okay.
I'll talk about Luka. If Luka didn't play in the West, it's possible he's an all-star starter in the East.
Definitely.
But because of how deep the West is, he had to slide down to the wild card slot because I can't sit here and tell you that he's having a better season than Steph, Ja, Donovan, or D-Book.
I don't think he is having a better season than any of those players.
He's not.
No.
His team is right up there. I think they're the 7th seed right now. And so
they've just been hovering around the same spot the last 3 seasons. They really need to figure out how to take that next step.
Yeah, I think it's going to have to do with trading either Porzingis or Tim Hardaway, but that's a conversation for another episode.
Yeah. My utilities off the bench, I also have...
I didn't talk about Chris Paul.
Oh, sorry.
Go for it. Go ahead. I'm guessing you have Chris Paul? Please tell me you have Chris Paul.
I snubbed Chris Paul. I have him in my list of snubs because I was looking at his basketball reference, and he's only averaging 14 points. He is on the best team in the league, one of the best playmakers in the league, but he's not... I wouldn't put him above Luka. I wouldn't put him above any of the other guards I have in my list either.
Well,
so
I did,
snubbed.
As the second best player on the best team in the league, being that floor general or that player coach, he deserved the spot, most definitely. One of the premier playmakers for the league. His 3-point percentage is down this year, which is a little ironic because Devon Booker's is up.
See, I know how surprising it must be to hear that I don't have Chris Paul as an all-star, since I'm a huge Chris Paul guy.
Yeah, that actually was really surprising.
I don't think he's got to get more points.
Does he though? When he's got Mikal, he's got Booker and Ayton that he's all dishing to.
The only reason, because he would be in the same boat as Draymond. Draymond's averaging 8 points a game, but he's a forward. Chris Paul, there are so many other guards in the league that are scoring more than him and that are playmaking, not obviously nearly as well, but still playmaking good enough to suffice for the scoring that Chris Paul doesn't do.
All right, so I think Chris Paul gets the All-Star nod. I'm curious to see who your wild cards are, though.
I also have Luka. You can't really have Luka as not an All-Star anymore, I feel like. With the numbers, he's putting up 24, 7 and 8, I'm pretty sure are his numbers. And he has Luka Doncic things. He's going to be an all-star. He needs to figure out how to take his team to the next level, though. I also, surprisingly, have Valenciunas. We talked about this a little bit before we started recording this, but he's kind of in the same boat as Shea, I guess. He's on a losing team, but he brings so much to that team that they need, especially with Zion out. He's averaging 18.
Wait. You've got Valenciunas as an all-star over Brandon Ingram?
I have Brandon Ingram in my reserves replacing Paul George.
I've got Brandon Ingram in my reserves too, but like Valenciunas
that's just the way my list came out. Brandon Ingram's Paul George's still going to be out for the All-Star, so Brandon Ingram's still going to be in there playing, but he's averaging 18 and 12 on a team that desperately needs it with Zion out. The team traded for Valenciunas to purposefully put next to Zion, and they haven't even played together yet. But he
had that one game where he hit like 8-9 threes
in the first 7 in the first half. I'm pretty sure, and those are just all-star type things. He's got to be an all-star. He's had so many other big moments this season. He's just got to be an all-star. For me.
That's the biggest one that I'm like, yeah, you're kind of tripping on that. But
yeah, I know I'm reaching a lot. But.
So for my injury replacements, I picked up. I did 2. Number 1, Dejante Murray.
Okay.
Another guy like Luka, who if he played in the East, he probably would be a lock to potentially even start. Dude's having an amazing season. A lot of people predicted this season from him, with DeMar going to the Spurs, or not the Spurs, leaving the Spurs to go to the Bulls. And him having to take that next step, it's about time for a lot of people, in a lot of people's opinion.
Right.
And he finally did. His team isn't, winning. It's the Spurs. The Spurs have always been boring to watch, but they've been successful. And then my other injury replacement is Brandon Ingram. Another guy who, best player on the Pelicans right now, and there are nights where he's the best player on the court against a lot of teams. Unmatched scoring. I just don't think that he's done, with his team not winning as much as we'd like to see. He doesn't get the immediate nod, but he'll probably replace an injured Paul George.
See, my injured reserves, I have Brandon Ingram and Devon Booker, which could have been higher. That's just the way my list fell out. But I like how you were making a big deal about where I had Brandon Ingram when we literally have him in the same spot. So
it's not that I was making a big deal about him being an injury reserve. I was making a big deal about Valenciunas being above him.
Hey, you go in and average 18 and 12 and hit 7 threes at 7 foot
he
tall.
He did it one time.
Hey, that's
no,
more than
I got no
done
disrespect. No disrespect for Valenciunas. He's a great big. I don't think he's an all-star.
I will admit, you should be able to see I have a little bit of bias towards Valenciunas since he came from my Grizzlies, but he's still.
It was 3 teams. No, wait.
It was one team.
He played for them
last season.
I forgot he got traded for Marc Gasol.
Yeah, he played for them last season. But he has taken a step up from this year and last season.
For Valenciunas. So snubs. I've got 2 snubs. Or no, I've got 3. Excuse me. 3 snubs. My first snub is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Okay.
Obviously, amazing numbers, but we talked about him a little bit earlier. His team's bad. The Thunder are bad. Respect to him. He's an amazing player. He's going to be an all-star in the future, maybe even next season.
He is the face of that franchise.
He will be the next face of that franchise if they don't trade him for 2 second graders and a first grader. But
I would hate to be a Thunder's fan if they traded
him. Not anymore.
That would just be so awful.
Sam Presti, I know you setting them up for the future, but come on, man. And they were having this problem last season where it's like they wouldn't let him play.
Yeah.
They were doing that towards the end. You're doing it to Lou Dort too, and that was before Lou Dort had the season he's having this year, where it's
like 16 now.
Something like that. Like he was at one point just a perimeter defender.
That's crazy. He's got to be in most improved conversations.
I don't think he is. He deserves to be, but I don't think he is. Second snub is Kristaps Porzingis.
Interesting.
In that time span where Luka was hurt, Porzingis was keeping them afloat. Very similarly to the was Desmond Bane on the Memphis Grizzlies when Ja was hurt.
Yeah. I kept seeing Porzingis' name when I was trying to make my list, and I stopped on him every single time I saw his name. I wasn't sure if I wanted to put him on my ballot, and I put Valenciunas over him and gave him the edge.
Fair enough. And my last snub for the West, Andrew Wiggins. Very underrated season from Wiggins. Being traded to the Warriors was probably the best thing to happen to him.
Yeah, it takes the spotlight off of him.
Yeah, he is no longer expected to be the number 1 or 2 option, and instead can just fill that role. And he was having an all-star caliber season at the start of the season.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately for him, with Steph, going God mode.
And Clay's coming back.
Clay coming back, which was amazing to see.
Oh, yeah. That was great. That was one of those moments where you see him just on the court, you heard the announcer announce his name, you just get chills. Because it was such a big moment.
When he dunked on, it was somebody. He dunked on somebody. I want to say it was, I hope it wasn't Garland.
No.
He dunked on...
It was right over Jarrett Allen, and I think Evan Mobley was contesting too.
Maybe. No, Mobley's hurt, I
bigs.
think. He dunked on somebody.
Yeah.
And he landed, and my heart dropped when he landed. Because he had just tore his ACL.
First play back, and he's trying to do it again. Everyone's heart would have been broken.
As far as Wiggins goes, Wiggins was having an all-star caliber season, no doubt.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he's a role player, and role players don't make all-star games.
Yeah.
For the most part. Cal Korver was an all-star, but...
Iggy. He loved... No, never mind. I take that
Iggy
back.
was an all-star back when he was in Philly.
Yeah. I have 2 snubs for the West. I have 2 people we already talked about, but Dejante and CP3.
Really?
Yeah. Huh. We talked about them earlier. Both of them are having all-star conversation seasons. Just they're not doing quite enough in a heavy guard league, and it's just hard to make it as an all-star as a guard nowadays.
It really is. The league is so deep with guards.
Yeah.
And, when you're averaging, you got to average like 25 plus to even be considered an all-star as a guard nowadays.
How many of these guards on here are averaging around 25? Steph's, Donovan Mitchell, Ja, Luka, I know is all averaging at least 24. I think Shea's at 22.
Yeah.
But you want to start off the East?
East. So, I'm going to get a bunch of slack for my East starters. My East backcourt is Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan.
I don't think you're going to get as much. I think DeMar
I'm
is
not a
definitely
Bulls
a
fan.
lock.
I promise you I'm not a Bulls fan.
DeMar is definitely a lock. I think the other guard spot is definitely just either 50-50 between Trey and Zach.
Did you give it to Trey?
I gave it to Trey, yeah.
I gave it to Zach. DeMar is having an MVP caliber season. There's no question he's going to be an all-star starter.
Yeah.
I wanted to give it to Zach. He deserves it, in my opinion. He was leading he led that Bulls team to where they are now in order to be able to acquire players like Lonzo and DeMar in free agency. And I personally, I just think he deserves it. He's having a really good season. I arguably still think he's the best player on the Bulls. It can be debated that it's DeMar.
I'd say he's the most impactful.
Definitely. And then I feel like the front court players for the East starters are all locks.
Yeah, KD, Giannis, and Joel.
Yeah, KD, Giannis, Joel. Is Joel healthy right now?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's playing.
It's hard to tell with him.
I have KD. Since I said my West captain, I have my East captain as KD. But yeah, KD, Giannis, Joel, and DeMar are all locks.
I didn't put captains down, but I think Giannis takes it over KD.
I mean, that's
for the pure fan vote. Although I think Kevin Durant is leading the fan vote right now, so...
I think he's still number 1 in MVP. I know he has been a majority of the season.
No, it's Steph.
Steph now, good.
Steph overtook him for number 1 in the league ladder.
Let me predict the MVP 2 seasons in a row.
Oh, did you pick Jokic last year?
Yeah, I picked Jokic before the season started last year.
I picked Luka, and that was very much wrong. I've picked Luka the past 2 years and have been very much wrong.
You'll get there one day.
Hopefully.
Let's go to the reserves. I have Zach LaVine. We talked about him earlier. He's just our 1 or 2 best player on the Bulls with best team in the conference. I don't really know what else to say about Zach LaVine. He just does everything you need him to do. He can score in any facet. You just give him the ball and he'll go out there and get you a bucket. But my other guard off the reserve is James Harden. As much of a down season as he's having, it's still James Harden. He does what he needs to do. He can average 20 and 10, and that's still down for him. But that's pretty much what he's doing, is averaging 20 and 10, and that deserves him an all-star spot.
Yeah, my guard's off the bench. Trey Young, obviously.
Yeah.
Started the year really, really down. The new rules kind of kicked him in the head, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely.
But he turned around, picked it back up, And my other guard off the bench is LaMelo Ball,
Okay.
the number one player on the Charlotte Hornets, who's a super fun team to watch. If there's a Hornets game on, I will gladly watch it. I think that he's the least likely on my ballot to make the game, but at the same time, he is the best player. He's fun to watch, and that's what a lot of people look for in their All-Stars, is somebody who's fun to watch. That's why Ja was my West guard starter over Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah. I have LaMelo on my list too. I have him as my injury reserve. It's hard for me to pick someone like in their second year to just come in. I don't really know what I'm saying. LaMelo deserves to be an all-star, but like it's the same reason for CP3. It's just a guard-heavy league, and it's hard to put him up that high for me. But I have him down as injury reserve.
Gotcha. So, forwards
Yes.
for the bench. I got Jason Tatum, Jimmy Butler, and Jared Allen.
Those are really the only three options, honestly. Out of all the four, that's exactly who I have in my reserves. There aren't any other.
It was really hard to not let my bias show and make Tatum a starter.
I mean, as much as I don't like the Celtics, there's still no other forwards. Like, Jason Tatum's still averaging, 24?
Yeah, some crazy number.
Like-
And he was hurt for a decent amount of time, too.
Yeah, he's still having a pretty decent season, even though the Celtics are not.
Now, granted, if I had to choose between one of, say positions weren't a thing, I probably would have given the nod to Jaylen Brown
Okay.
over Jason Tatum. But Jaylen Brown's listed as a shooting guard. So, and the sitting at a 10 seed with exactly a 500 record, I can't justify giving the Celtics 2 All-Stars as much as I would love to. Because we can't let our bias show out here, now can we?
No. Oh, God. So, my wild cards in the East start...
So you had the same forwards as Tatum, Butler, and Allen?
Yeah, I had the same ones.
Tatum, we talked about him.
Yeah,
Jimmy
we talked
Butler.
about Jimmy.
The driving force behind the current 3 seed Miami Heat. Really quiet 3 seed too.
Yeah, especially since they've been missing Bam a lot of the season. He's been in and out. Is he still out?
I think he's still out. I don't think he's back yet.
Still out, yeah. Jimmy's just really taken that team over, and he keeps leading them to wins.
Respect to Tyler Hero off the bench.
Oh, yeah. Huge
I think he
stat.
was leading the team in scoring coming off the bench.
I mean, that makes sense. I don't know who else is really scoring off the bench over there.
No, he was averaging the most points on his team while
really?
coming off the bench.
Geez.
He was averaging 26 while coming off the bench.
Oh, wow. I did not see that.
It was early in the season. I don't know if it's still going on, but I know it was for a little bit.
Well, I highly doubt that. I think I saw Tyler Hero's averaging exactly 20, and Jimmy's at 23.
Yeah, that might not still be going on.
But that's crazy.
And Kyle Lowry really hasn't had the scoring impact that people thought he would. He's been more of that old school facilitator. Chris Paul, but to a very lesser degree.
Yeah,
I would argue.
Diet Chris Paul.
And that's no disrespect to Kyle Lowry, all-time probably the greatest Raptor of all time. I would
Undeniably.
argue. This season has not been what a lot of people expected for Kyle Lowry, but that adds on to what Jimmy Butler's been doing, carrying this team to 26-15.
Yeah, but this is an all-star battle. All-stars are this is an individual Jimmy's performance. As hard as it is not to include team success while thinking about the players for all-stars are strictly based off individual performances.
Depending.
I won't say strictly, but mainly based off individual performance.
Yeah. Jimmy Butler's actually hurt right now.
Oh, really?
He's only played 23 games this seison, which that's still a decent amount.
I still don't know if you're going to pick over him.
He's averaging 23, 5.5 assists on 50% from the field.
Yeah. Well, that's what we got injury reserves for, at least.
Yeah. And then Jared Allen. Cavaliers have been the surprising team of the year. No doubt about that.
I never thought I would actually enjoy watching a Cavs game in my life.
Legitimately. If LeBron... This is the first time the Cavs have been relevant since LeBron left the second time. They're... What are the... I think they're the 5th or... The 6th seed. The 6th seed.
They were fighting for a 4 seed for a majority of the season.
Yeah, they were up there. I mean, they have more wins than the 76ers, but they also have more losses. They've played 2 more games.
It's unfortunate that the Cavs lost Ricky Rubio.
Ricky Rubio at the start of the season was an all-star,
Yeah.
which is weird to say because it's Ricky Rubio.
My first list before I edited a little bit had Ricky Rubio as an all-star as a joke. But that would have been great to see him as an all-star. But yeah, Jarrett Allen he's the defensive anchor on one of the better defensive teams in the league. He's averaging like 18 points. He's one of the better lob threats in the league. He does what they need. And
I know a lot of people were
down on him
severely. The Cavs paid him that contract.
Oh yeah.
And people were questioning it simply because, it's Jarrett Allen.
The league doesn't really look at those types of centers anymore as that valuable, but he's showing that those types of centers still make a huge impact.
Beginning of the season, I know you and I were talking about it. Is he a top 10 center? We named 10 centers we thought were better than him, and he's gone and proven a lot of people, including us, wrong.
Oh, yeah.
He's averaging almost 17 points a game with 11 rebounds and 2 assists as a big man.
If you would have told me last year that Jarrett Allen was going to be an all-star this year, I would have laughed in your face.
Legitimately.
That is the most surprising thing to me, that he's going to be an all-star this year.
So, wild cards.
Wild cards. I have Bradley Beal as my first wild card. He can't miss the all-star game this year. He's taken a step back in scoring, but it's because he's trying to get his team more involved, which is what people have been wanting him to do. For the last couple years, he's averaged 30. And now he's winning. He's getting his team more involved with a little bit less points, but he's still averaging like 23 to 25. So yeah, I think he deserves the one wild card spot. And then my other is Domantas Sabonis. Might be a little surprising.
Yeah, I was not expecting to see.
He's averaging similar numbers to Valenciunas, around like an 18 and 12.
So you just got a random big man in both conferences, huh?
I mean, I for my wild cards, I wanted to go one guard and one forward. Because
I couldn't justify it. The forwards are not.
It was really hard to do, but I just didn't want to overcrowd my All-Star ballot with guards.
See, I could overcrowd.
Both of my injury reserves in the East are guards, so I had to pick a forward for my wild card.
So,
Domantas Sabonis, I think the Pacers have made it clear that they're no longer looking at trades for Sabonis, and they want to trade Miles Turner and Karras, and he's shown that the Pacers are making the right move by doing that.
I want to see Miles Turner go to the Hornets so bad, but that's a conversation for today.
Yeah.
So for my wild cards, I have James Harden and Darius Garland. So Harden, you talked about earlier. It's James Harden. He's gonna make the All-Star team.
Yeah.
An argument could be made to swap his spot with LaMelo's spot, but either way, they both can still be All-Stars in my opinion.
I don't even know if I'd argue that, to be honest.
But Darius Garland. Darius Garland is the Chris Paul to Jarrett Allen's DeAndre Jordan.
Interesting.
So
elaborate that.
Their success is built amongst each other, and he deserves that All-Star spot just as much as Allen does. I think he's the least likely on my team to make the All-Star game, either him or LaMelo.
You said Jarrett Allen's least likely?
No, Darius Garland.
Okay, I'll say. I think it's a concept, like, everybody knows Jarrett Allen's an All-Star this year.
Yeah. But Darius Garland having an amazing season, especially with Colin Sexton being out, and that more than likely means that Colin Sexton will be traded. But just look up his stats real quick. Garland is averaging 19 points a game, 3 rebounds, and 7.5 assists on 46, 37, and 90.
Okay.
Dude absolutely is the bucket of the Cleveland Cavaliers, no doubt. And he's the facilitator for the 6th seed Cleveland Cavaliers.
I definitely think he should be up there in All-Star talks just as much as Jarrett Allen is. I have him in my snubs list also.
You have him as a snub?
Yeah, I have him in my snubs.
He's got to be on the team, dude. I don't see a world where. Then again,
there's so many guards. I would not put Garland over DeMar, Trey Young, Zach Levine, James Harden, Bradley Beal, LaMelo, or Fred VanVleet.
I got him over Fred VanVleet and Bradley Beal.
I can't do that. As good of a season Darius Garland is having, Just I can't put him over guys like that.
Yeah, Freddie and Bradley Beal are both of my injury replacements.
Mine are LaMelo and Freddie.
Fred VanVleet is having a quiet year, but a great year nonetheless. He's starting to pop back up. But, I mean, the Raptors are the 8th seed. So, they're having a very Raptor year.
Yeah.
Not much really else to be said. He's the leading scorer on that team. I'm just glad it's not Siakam.
Siakam shouldn't be an all-star.
No.
That's definitely got to go to Fred VanVleet. I can see a world where he actually makes the roster.
I can see a world where he does. I can see a world where he doesn't. I think he's the most 50-50 option, other than maybe Garland.
This year was definitely the hardest year to pick all-stars that I've ever done.
It was a struggle.
I've got so hard.
4 snubs for the East.
I got 2 for each conference, but I definitely could have just...
So
there's so many more.
My East snubs: Drew Holiday, Jaylen Brown, Jeremy Grant, and Chris Middleton. Drew Holiday probably would be the biggest snub I'd say out of my list. Simply because he's having an amazing year, very very reminiscent of his last All-Star year.
Yeah.
He was the driving force when Giannis was hurt for that short span. He kept them afloat. Jaylen Brown probably would have made it over Tatum if he was
a forward.
Not a guard.
Wasn't he a forward last year?
I
swear he was classified as a small forward, and Jason Tatum has been classified as a power forward for the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, but they bounce those 2 around. The Celtics got to figure some stuff out, and unfortunately, right now they've got it as I think Marcus Smart's their starting point guard.
Because I noticed 2K changed him to a point guard, and that's just so weird. I know he is a good playmaker, but it's just so weird to see him listed as a point guard.
Personally, I'd rather see him come off the bench.
Yeah, I think that should be his role. Yeah, I agree.
Have Peyton Pritchard get that starting slot.
Peyton Pritchard, 90 points in a Pro-Am game.
Peyton Pritchard is going to be the next Kyle Korver. I'm calling it now.
You think so?
That's going to bite me if it doesn't come true. And then Jeremy Grant. This was the bias snub. He's with as thin as the forwards are in the entire league. If I didn't have Freddie as an IR, I probably would have given it to Jeremy Grant, in all honesty.
He's listed as a top 10 forward in the East, and that is just so bizarre to me. I mean, he is averaging 20. It's just so bizarre to me to see Jeremy Grant.
Well, they're not the worst team in the East.
They are not.
They are 9-31.
Woo, let's go.
Go Pistons. God, it hurts to be a Detroit fan.
No, it doesn't, because know why? Not this year. We're going to take one more year after this year.
Get Chet?
No, Chet is this year. Chet comes out this year. The next year, you know who we're going to get?
We're not getting Bronny James.
We're not getting Bronny James. Bronny James is...
Isn't he a junior?
He might be the year after this year, honestly, but I think he's the year after that, but I'm having a brain fart. I don't even know.
All right, so Jeremy Grant, that's the hometown bias. If our team didn't suck, I probably would have had him as an IR. And then Chris Middleton, probably one of my least favorite players to watch, but he puts up the numbers.
There's so many forwards in the East that are just doing this, having the same numbers, and they're all just borderline all-star numbers that aren't impressive enough to want to put on your all-star ballot, and it's so rough.
You got the guys who are blowing things out of the water to where it's okay, but then you look at where their team is and it's oh, that's why you're putting up such good numbers.
Yeah.
Well, you got Sabonis as one of your IRs. They're the 13th seed.
I got so many people on my ballot that aren't even in the playoffs. I have, like you said, Sabonis, they're not in the playoffs. Valenciunas isn't in the playoffs. Shea's not in the playoffs. Who else? I don't think the Timberwolves are in the playoff race. They might be in the play-in.
I think the biggest question for this year is going to be, how do we assess Bradley Beal? because he was averaging 30 last year and didn't make the All-Star team because his team was bad.
That's
so
what
if he
saying.
doesn't make it this year, what are we saying? Because say last year, okay, you're destroying the league, but your team sucks, so you're not going to be an All-Star. Now you're not putting up the numbers, and your team's doing. I mean, they're the 9 seed at 22-20, so they're not doing awful, but they're doing better than last year.
Yeah, that's what I was. That's the point I was making when I was talking about him as my wild card. It's just we had him averaging 30 and losing, and people didn't want to vote him as an All-Star because he was on a losing team. But now he's winning, and he's getting his team more involved and not averaging the 30 points. And I don't know why people would be upset that someone's averaging 30 to begin with. That's like just.
Well, it's because nobody else on his team did anything.
Who
His second best player was Rui Hachimura.
Exactly. You expect Rui Hachimura to come in and drop 18? Like,
I mean, that's kind of why they drafted him inside the lottery, but that's besides the point.
Well, that's just not what Rui has been. I don't know what NBA fans want from Bradley Beal if they don't vote for him as an All-Star this year.
I personally didn't have him as an All-Star because I'm going to argue that Darius Garland, James Harden, LaMelo, Trey, DeMar, and Zach all deserve it more.
He's my wild card. I'm sticking with that. He's got to get that vote. Let me see. What other things are... Let me see your ballot.
So, I mean, that's pretty much it from me. You want to talk All-Star Game MVP? Who you think dark horses for that's going to be?
That's such a random...
Who took it last year? Was it...
I feel like it was Kawhi, because was last year the first one they did with the Kobe thing in the special All-Star game?
Maybe.
Because I know Kawhi went...
No, that wasn't last year. That was... No, it was No, it was 2 years.
That was 2 years? I remember, whichever year it was...
Did they have an actual All-Star game last year?
I don't even remember, but whatever happened, I remember the first year they did the Kobe thing, Kawhi won that MVP.
Yeah, because it ended on a flipping free throw from Anthony Davis, which was dumb. Anthony Davis didn't make my All-Star ballot.
Yeah, he originally made mine, but I took him out of it.
I don't see the Lakers as justifiably having more than one All-Star.
Yeah. The same reason why you can't give the Celtics 2 All-Stars.
Yeah, because I think the Lakers and the Celtics are actually pretty similar record-wise. 21-21 for the... Yeah. The only difference is the Lakers... 21-21 leads the Lakers to the 8 seed. 21-21 leads the Celtics to the 10 seed.
Yeah, that's because...
Which is weird to see because we're so adjusted to the West being a dominant conference. Now the East is stacked.
Yeah, especially since the West even has the guys like LeBron, Steph Curry, Jokic, and like they just got all of the guys over there. I mean,
Kawhi's healthy. He's an all-star starter lock.
Oh, 100%. That would make Cat not be a question for me. Just have him starting. All-star MVP, though. That's such a random thing to try and predict because nobody, like... I mean, now with the new rules, people do kind of try and go out there, but nobody's still playing 100%. Anybody could just go out there and just get a random dub off the bench. Like, for all we know, Draymond could come in and they could run the offense through Draymond.
Come on, man. You know they're not running the offense through Draymond Green.
I know they're not actually going to, but it's the All-Star game. You never know who's going to pop off. But if
John Morant's my All-Star game MVP. I don't know why. It's just that gut feeling.
I see why you'd say that because it's his first All-Star appearance. Josh, the type of dude, he wants to go out there and put on a show, and he wants to prove everybody that he's that dude. So he's just going to go out there and ball. That's what he's going to do.
I want to see it. I've been high on John Morant since March Madness.
I'm going to go... I'll do one from each conference. I'm either going Ja or DeMar is going to win it.
I'm doing one from each conference. Dark horse in the East.
Yeah. I'm going DeMar.
Give me Joel. Joel's my dark horse for the East to win it.
Play hard and try and convince one of those All-Stars to get traded for Ben Simmons and team up with him there.
Facts.
Right.
Ben Simmons. All right. You got anything else?
No, not really.
All right.
I think that's a good time.
Yeah. Well, thank you for listening. This has been White Boys Talk Hoops.
We'll be back.